So that is a vacuum breaker. This is also a vacuum breaker. This is the one that was up there. This is probably 25 years old or more, and it was spraying out all over the place from underneath this top cap. Now, a vacuum breaker is required by code in certain places in commercial buildings because it's what they call a backflow preventer. More or less, it prevents any water from getting siphoned backwards into the municipal water supply. In some cases, it's required in residential applications. I have heard of backflow preventers being installed in lawn irrigation on residential, but this is typically something you're going to find in a commercial building. And a vacuum breaker is not the only form of backflow preventer. There are other backflow preventers out there. Now, this one is pretty old. It was installed in the building a long time ago. And the way you can really tell that isn't just that it's mounted up there, but that this faucet on this janitor closet doesn't have a vacuum breaker built into it. Normally it would be on the top of the faucet built into it. So this thing started leaking, and we had two options. We could either smash out the wall, smash out this cinder block wall, replace the faucet with something new, and then either cap this off or tie it together, whatever it would take just to more or less stop it from leaking. I think we'd end up just tying it together with an elbow and a couple nipples. But it was that, or try to find one and do a direct replacement. And it might not look like much, but that's actually a tight fit. I mean, it could be worse, but that's actually a really tight fit, and that's some old plumbing up there. So sometimes this stuff is fairly easy and straightforward, and other times there are problems. We had plumbers come out and look at it. They were supposed to send us a quote. They never got back to us on it, so I just said, screw it. I ordered the part and did the work myself. So sometimes you can farm this stuff out. We were really busy, so I really just didn't want to deal with it. We were going to have them in here to do other work, but apparently they didn't want to do it either. So I took care of it and thought I'd make a little video here just to give you an idea about what all I had to do. So this isn't really a how-to video or anything else like that. I started filming in portrait, so I just decided to leave it in portrait, and this is not the best smartphone for doing videos, so the video quality isn't exactly the best. But I think it just gives you an idea about what all was involved. And up here in this drop ceiling are a couple of gate valves that are a little bit difficult to reach. So I've got to shut off the water to the sink before I can remove this bad vacuum breaker. There's a union, so it should come off fairly easily. However, I don't know how old this is, so it could be corroded, could give me some trouble. I also had to shut off the water to the men's room on the other side of the wall, so that means I had to put up signs. So in addition to the magnetic out of service sign, I also put up the closed for maintenance barricade tape at an angle across the door. Sometimes it's a good idea to use multiple signs because, well, people don't read. Fortunately, they still make this part. So time to get an adjustable wrench and some channel locks and take this thing loose. So once I loosen up this flange, I can pull this out of the way. I'm going to have to spin it off here. It could be kind of seized up in there. I may have to get a small pipe wrench. Channel locks may not do it. And then I'll probably have to mount it in a bench vise and unthread this nipple that is attached to the other half of the union. I'll put new Teflon tape on this nipple underneath it, new Teflon tape on the nipple I take off of it, and then go ahead and reattach in reverse order of removal. You see there's a little bit of play in here. It's going to be somewhat of a tight fit, but without this union I wouldn't be able to take it apart. A lot of the guys that do construction or installation or production, whatever you want to call it, just go quick and cheap. They don't put things like unions and shutoff valves and things like that. They don't look at where they're putting it in relation to other things like ductwork or conduit or things like that, because they don't have to come back and fix it later. If you see a union installed, that's probably somebody who is a technician like me. We have to go back and fix everything after the installation guys make it to print and run away. So I got lucky. I was able to spin this with channel locks, but I might have to remove the nipple before I spin this all the way off. So there isn't much play in that pipe. So I'll have to put the channel locks here. I may even have to replace the nipple. I might not be able to reuse it if I chew it up too much. Well, I got lucky again. Might clean that out with a brush first, but I think I can reuse it. So I put some Teflon tape on the threads of the vertical nipple. I cleaned out this nipple as much as I could with a wire brush, and then I just simply used a flathead screwdriver to scrape the rest of the sediment out. I pushed a paper towel through. I cleaned off the threads a little bit with a wire brush and put some new Teflon tape on this. And I don't normally put Teflon tape on a union, even though I'll put them on compression fitting threads. If I'm putting it on a union, it's because it's in a tight spot. It's an older one that I'm reusing, something like that, so that if the next guy has to deal with this, say in 10 years, it'll be a little bit easier to remove it, as well as Teflon tape kind of seals up the threads to prevent leaks, especially if something gets bumped or vibrated. It also makes it easier to remove something because it protects the threads from corrosion. So that's the reason why I'm using it in this case. And you can see there is still some water pressure, even though I shut those gate valves as much as I could. A little bit's getting through, but it shouldn't affect anything putting this on. So let's go ahead and screw on the new vacuum breaker. Now, since I decided to reuse this nipple because it wasn't really deformed or chewed up too bad or damaged, I've got to be careful that when I tighten it down that I don't make it oval or anything else like that. The union should take up for any sort of play that's going to make it a little bit difficult to align. Yeah, I may have to bend this elbow up a little bit. So with two hands free off camera, I was able to thread this flange for the union onto the other half. That's one of the nice things about them. They can kind of compensate for something that's a little bit short or that's just not perfectly square, just off a little bit. Then I just use the adjustable wrench to thread this on the rest of the way. Not fun. So since this work is being done in a janitor closet, I've put the magnetic out of service sign on the back of the door, as well as this stretch of barricade tape that says closed for maintenance. This way I can get to it quick and easy if I have to shut down a restroom or some other area in this part of the building. It's out of sight, it's out of mind, nobody's going to be confused and think that the janitor closet is out of service. It's just a good idea to keep things like this in janitor closets or maybe coat closets. You can put it on the inside of a door frame, on the back of a door, up on a shelf, in a cabinet, something like that, where it's out of the way, but you can get to it in a hurry. If you're in facilities, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of running to the other side of the complex to get one of these signs. And when all is said and done, the vacuum breaker isn't leaking anymore, but this nipple underneath it, unfortunately, I think is leaking through some corrosion. You can see the rust going down the side of it. Even though I put Teflon tape on there, I think when I took the old breaker off, I might have freed up something that was on its last leg. Sometimes rust will eat a hole right through a pipe. So I've been scavenging around looking for a 3/8 elbow, a 3/8 nipple. I think I got something that'll work. Before, water was leaking out of the top of the vacuum breaker. Because so much was coming out through the top, I didn't really notice this. If it was leaking here at the same time, I couldn't tell. This is what happens when you get into a field where you got to get your hands dirty. Fixing things sometimes doesn't always go so easy. Removing everything with the adjustable wrench and the channel locks went smoother than I thought, but when I run into something as simple as this is what happens. So now I've got to check the restroom to make sure nobody's in there, tape off the door, put up a sign, go up in the drop ceiling, shut off the gate valves, take all this loose, try to piece something together, and then do the reverse, verify the water works in the restroom, verify the faucets work down here in the janitor sink, and check for leaks. So after a really tight fit, I managed to get this thing on there. It did drip a little bit until I turned the water on, then it sealed right up. So I had to use what I had. We've got plumbing fittings in 3 different places in the building. I went to all 3 and I managed to cobble together something that would work. Here's the fitting that came off. You can see the corrosion right there. So that's no good. Ended up using an elbow. It's literally a 90-degree fitting with female threads on either side. Now ideally I could have used a street elbow that's got female threads on one side and male threads on another. Unfortunately I didn't have one in 3/8. So I had to use a hex nipple. Now a nipple is a section of pipe 12 inches or shorter that's threaded on both ends. It's used to join 2 plumbing fixtures or fittings together. So if it was all threads, really short and all threads, it'd be a close nipple. So this is a 3/8 thread. So if it was short with all threads, it'd be a 3/8 close nipple. And then you'd have an 1.5 inches and a 2 inch and a 2.5, all the way up to 12 inches. So it's a funny sounding name, but that's what the terminology is. I had to use a hex nipple, which has got this hex shape in the middle here, where you can grab it with a wrench, instead of say a close nipple or maybe probably an 1.5 inches, nothing longer than that. But I managed to make it work. It's fine for plumbing, but I typically use that for pneumatics because you use all the same stuff pretty much for water as you would for air when it comes to black pipe, galvanized pipe, brass pipe, things like that. Not soldered together or anything, just threaded pipe, I guess I should say. So with a lot of work, I got it on there. Everything seems to be working well. I tested all the plumbing in the men's room. That's all good. The janitor sink is working good. It was just more time consuming to go back and forth looking for parts. I had to go to the machine shop twice to mount this in a bench vise in order to thread the nipple on there as far as it would go just to make this thing fit. So what I'm going to do now is go back to my desk and order a bunch of 3/8 fittings from McMaster-Carr or Grainger, maybe both. I'll get better quality stuff from them than I will going to the big box stores. Sometimes that cheap Chinese stuff just doesn't fit right. It might say it's a 3/8 thread, but it just doesn't fit right. But there's always Teflon tape to handle that, right? So this just gives you an idea of some of the things that have to be done in facilities maintenance. Thanks for watching.